What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Check the Kick. I'm the host, Devin. Sherdog.com is the website. I have a very special guest with me today, a friend, a fellow Sherdog associate, and just an awesome, cool guy, Dayne Fox. What's up, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate the overindulgences. I don't know too many people that call me awesome and cool, but I very much appreciate it.
You are probably the only person I know that can pull off a raccoon luau themed shirt. If you're only listening to this on audio, I'm sorry, but Dayne does have a wonderful shirt on. I thought I was cool in an Outcast shirt that I've probably worn like 100 times on this fucking show, but no, raccoons on a luau shirt. Take the cake.
I got compliments for it at work big time, so
that's awesome. Christmas is right around the corner. A couple years ago, my fiance's mom got her a sweater with like boxers on it, like the boxer dogs. So I'm like, that's a funny sweater. You can wear that once and put it in the back of your closet. Last card of the year coming up, UFC Tampa. We're going to talk about the last pay-per-view of the year. Pantoja gets an awesome win. All around good card. We're not going to be able to talk about the whole card, but it was just last Saturday. We're recording this on Monday. What would be your letter grade for the last pay-per-view of 2024?
I gave it about a B plus or so. The main card, I'm not going to say that it was bad, but it could have been better. Whereas I thought that the prelims were absolute fire. You know, you had the Sterling Evloev fight that was just absolute fire. I know that it was largely a ground game, but it was one of the best ground battles that we've seen in years, if I'm being honest. And I know that a lot of people are crapping on the co-main event. It wasn't fire by any means, but it was a very strategic fight. It was kind of fun to watch from an analyst point of view, but I know that it's not going to win Rakhmonov a lot of fans.
Yeah, the whole card was really cool. Some old dogs getting kind of taken out.
Oh, that was
behind the woodshed. The state of Washington grappling. Let's go. Chase Hooper, Enumclaw, Michael Chiesa, Spokane Valley. I lived like 5 minutes away from him for a period of time. I'll tell you off air. But no, nothing between it. No weirdness, but well, just explain the living situation off air. Yeah, so Washington grappling. Who the hell knew we could do that? Pretty cool card. And then a lot of old dogs like Vicente Luque, you know, showing up and catching a body in his quickest finish ever, and the most Vicente Luque way to win a fight. But really,
there were a lot of old dogs that were put out to pasture too, though.
Yeah. Chris Weidman,
Anthony Smith, Guida.
It was sad. And all those dudes should retire. I actually agree with Dana White. I don't agree with him very often, but I agree with him. Those dudes should totally go away. The cherry on top of the card was Pantoja, and we'll get right into the main event. Pantoja defeats Kai Asakura in the second round via rear naked choke. Yeah, he kind of said going into this fight, like, Kai Asakura was very... I don't want to say he was not respecting Pantoja, but I don't think Asakura knew what he was about to get himself into. He was walking and talking like he was going to pull up to the UFC and hit Pantoja with the jump knee like Jorge Masvidal did Ben Askren, and he was going to walk away the champ easy peasy. That's the vibe I got from him all fight week. And Pantoja's vibe was kind of like similar, but way more quiet and nonchalant. And Pantoja was very matter of fact this whole fight weekend. This fight was pretty matter of fact.
Yeah.
This was like, the famously annoying levels conversation, but like, yeah, dude, there's levels to this shit. Like, and that back take he hit on Asakura, dude.
I'm of the opinion that Asakura did himself a disservice by not taking a warm-up fight, so to speak. I think that he would have benefited from a little bit of an adjustment to say, oh, wow, okay, so yeah, there are levels to this. I mean, that's not to say that he didn't face good competition at Ryzen. He absolutely did. But, just like you said, with regards to the levels, there's a reason why the UFC is the preeminent organization. So it didn't even need to be like Brandon Royval that he needed to step in and face. Like, I think somebody like, say, Alex Perez, if he had been healthy, or I don't know, even Tim Elliott, just somebody, let him get used to the octagon format, because and they use a ring in Ryzen. I think anything like that would have been a benefit to him, as opposed to just jumping in there right away. Because at this point, is he at the back of the line for another title shot at this point? He kind of is.
I mean, he'll be ranked by the time the show comes out for the listeners. He'll be ranked. And whatever he's going to be ranked, he's going to actually be ranked probably higher than he deserves to be.
Probably
true. Just because he's got some hype. Tatsuro Taira just lost, but Tatsuro Taira, number one, does not have like the social media hype and the fame that Kai Asakura has. Supposedly the dude earns like hella money. I don't want to say a number because I don't know the number, and the number I heard seems very overinflated. But supposedly he makes a shit ton of money like off of YouTube and stuff. And over in Japan, he kind of came up the way that like Jorge Masvidal did like in our era when we were younger. So he's got a big fan base. He doesn't, Tatsuro Taira, in my opinion, is probably the better fighter of the two. And I think Tatsuro Taira would probably beat Asakura in a fight just because that grappling deficiency. But he'll probably be ranked right next to Tatsuro Taira, and he'll probably be a top five in the top five. Pantoja, speaking of rankings, going into this fight, he was ranked like number 11 in the UFC's pound for pound rankings. That needs to change really quickly. Our rankings at Sherdog are more accurate. And they also include other organizations, and they have Pantoja we have Pantoja significantly higher. Where do you think he should be in the world pound for pound rankings?
Oh boy, give me a second to pull up Sherdog's list, because I can't remember where we've got him. I was looking at them a little bit before, and yeah, you're right. They are definitely higher, but I can't remember exactly where we got him. Sherdog pound for pound rankings, perfect. Okay, yeah, we've got him at 5, and I was thinking roughly 6. Okay, so we've got Makhachev, Topuria, Jones, and Tejada ahead of him. Okay, so he was 6 with Volk ahead of him. I probably... that's hard.
I think that just
I think we've got him in the right place right now. 5's accurate.
And I'd argue I won't die on this hill. But like, I'd argue to put him over Jones and Alex. Just like, look at the division. Look at all the people he's beaten. Like, he's beaten Brandon Moreno 3 times. That's better than any win that Alex Pereira has, including, he beat Adesanya at 185. He also got knocked the fuck out by him. Besides that, like, what's Alex's best win? Jan Blachowicz?
What's Jones' best win in the last 5 years?
That was my next argument.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm only arguing that because I think Alex should be above Jones right now. Pound for pound rankings are current, like today, pound for pound. Pantoja's not only lapping the division, but he's beating so many contenders that it's just like you can almost pay him to lose a fight so he could have a rivalry with somebody. Like, obviously he doesn't, nobody wants to lose a fight, but like, who does this, like, what's next? Let's talk about the fight a little bit because I'm going past the fight. I love
That was kind
Pantoja's
of my
game.
fault, but
No, it's me. I mean, it's a free. We have topics, but there's no, we only have the topic. There's no formal, and I'm here to just talk about MMA. There's Pantoja's game as a champ. I've never seen a more I'm trying to find the best way to articulate this. I've never seen a more successful champion with such a high offensive game that puts defense to the side and is willing to take risks. The only other person I could think of that has a game similar to Pantoja, as far as like willingness to take risks and just have their fight, is like Khabib.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And when I mean, they have different games, but as far as like, this is my game. I'm not going to be risk averse. I'm defensively sound as a fighter, but like I'm taking my risk and we're going to have my fucking fight every time. And like, that's what Pantoja does every time. Every one of his fights are like a Pantoja fight, even the slow and more tepid ones like the Steve Erceg. But this fight was a Pantoja fight. Like Asakura was targeting the body, which is smart because, I've seen Pantoja hurt twice in film. One of them is when Figueiredo hit him with the uppercut and dropped him. The other time was in a sparring video when Sean O'Malley teep kicked him in the gut. Those are the only two times I physically have seen Pantoja hurt. But even like Asakura was firing body kicks and eating him to the body. I don't know how this dude, like in his mid-30s at flyweight, eats these shots and pushes forward. He's got good power too. Like his power is fucking slept on. And I think his power has gotten better, like as he's become a champ.
Well, when you're champ, you're earning a bigger paycheck, and it allows you to focus a little bit more on improving your game. Like imagine if Pantoja had gotten his title shot up a couple of years earlier, because we had to deal with Moreno and Figgy for 4 fights. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to rip on that quadrilogy. It was a lot of fun. But, if Pantoja had gotten that opportunity, I think that we'd be singing a different tune, and that DJ might be a little bit more prone to get up off the couch. I mean, right now he's saying he's not coming back, but I think that if Pantoja's threat to his legacy as the top flyweight of all time, I think if Pantoja was more threatening to that, I think DJ might be singing a different tune, because I think DJ responds to the idea that somebody's threatening that legacy.
DJ always said he wanted to fight for $1 million. And then he tweeted out saying, I was offered $2 million and I said no. And number one, Dana White, you're not listening to this. Demetrius Johnson is talking about less than $5 million. John Jones is talking about fucking 30. Pick up the phone, offer Demetrius Johnson $3 million, and he'll fight Pantoja. Because if he's saying two, that means if you double it, I'll take it. The reason why he said 2 is because that's his number. Like he's like, offer me what I need to. I think that's what that means, right?
Oh no, I think so too. But DJ's always kept that type of stuff close to the chest, Yeah, no, he's never revealed that stuff, and I think now that he's in a position where he actually feels wanted by the public, he's going to use that leverage to say, no, give me more.
We got to this is like the most interesting part, because the fight was it wasn't so one-sided, but like I think Pantoja clearly won the first, and then like the way he took first off, like He's just such a dog on a bone. Like, he rocks Asakura. Asakura is trying to, circle out to the right, and he just throws that big leaping left hook and fucking pins Asakura against the cage. His head snaps back. And then, if you watch the knockout in slow motion, his head snaps back and then he slides down the cage. And Pantoja's already so quick getting a takedown and cutting the angle that he's completing a takedown. But that, he could have, hit him, step back, and probably got a ground and pound finish there. He had Asakura rocked. His willingness to just meet Asakura in the pocket. He's so brave too. He has that, there's not many dudes that have that just crazy bravery in them, Hobocop.
Mm-hmm.
Just another dude that's fuck it, I'm willing to we'll let him fly, and whatever happens. Pantoja's another dude that's just, he's so brave. There's flaws in Pantoja's game, but I'm not going to sit here and pick on him until someone makes him pay for it. And been quite a while since anyone has been able to do that.
Was it Figgy or Askar?
Askar beat him in that highly contested.
It was controversial.
And then Figgy beat him. And that was right before Figgy went into his quadrilogy with Brandon Moreno. And you said that, and that kind of sparked something in my mind where, I'm pretty sure that quadrilogy between Figgy and Brandon Moreno ended up serving Pantoja the best, because those dudes beat the fuck out of each other for so long that neither one of them came out the same.
No.
And if either one of those dudes was stuck having to fight Pantoja maybe after their first two fights, might have looked different. But today I'd probably pick Pantoja to beat both of them again. Even
at this point, I absolutely would.
Especially if someone was like, "Hey, Pantoja's going up to bantamweight to take a random fight against Figgy," even up at 35, I'd probably favor Pantoja, just because his volume and his tenacity. He's so tenacious. He's like a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, that's a good description of him. When I think about Pantoja's his defense is generally him holding on to his opponent so that they can't do anything to him. That's his form of defense.
He'll shell up in the pocket. He'll trade with you in the pocket. Mm-hmm. And then if he's not getting his way or he's getting hit with something, that's when he'll just mix in some grappling. And the way he took the back against the cage is exactly how I called it in my breakdown, but I thought it would be in round 4. I was he might not even get the takedown, but if there's back exposure, he'll just take the back against the cage. The way he jumped the back on Asakura was literally watching a kid play leapfrog at a park. It was really cool, man. And I've never even been the hugest Pantoja fan until
just recently.
Semi-recent. Yeah. But you can't the dude was a Uber driver 3 years ago.
Yeah. No. And that's what I mean when I say he finally started making big bucks when he became the champ. And so I think that was when he was really able to we'll say, let his wings spread. He can concentrate full time on fighting. And it's kind of a bummer because, the smaller you are generally, the quicker that you age because you're more reliant on speed. And flyweight is the smallest men's division, which is why it's kind of God, if he could have only gotten that chance sooner, and we could really see the type of fighter that he could be. Because I actually think he's past his physical prime, but the fact that he's able to maintain the level of success that he's had at this point is exceptionally impressive.
Yeah, biologically, it's he has to be there. But number one, he's Brazilian.
Yeah.
Number 2, there's no more USADA. Number 3, he's a world champion and he makes more money, so that kind of pairs with number 2. And he's also full-time living in Florida at a good camp. and not driving for Uber anymore. So like, even if his athletic prime is in the past, like if I, for me, I think non-Uber driver Pantoja that can focus 1,000% on MMA is going to probably be a little bit better than like athletic prime Pantoja, but still driving for Uber, and he's so dogged. Like the dude just seems to like, he's a guy that's like, I'll just be a champion forever. Like, it's just kind of what is it? It looks like he thinks he's going to be able to do. Like, I'm just going to remain champion until I'm 40. He's awesome.
Well, along those lines, I think that he actually feeds on the disrespect. So there's a part of me that's like, please, everybody, keep ignoring him. Please keep disrespecting him, because I think he feeds on that. So
he's becoming inevitable. It's the same thing as like Volk. Like not a ton of people like Volk until they kind of started to see his personality, and then he beat so many people. And we're going to talk about him, but it's kind of like Ilia Topuria as well. Like people were like, Topuria, he's annoying, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, like he just killed your two favorite guys. Like you kind of almost have to respect him. That's how it's becoming with Pantoja. He's really, really good. We talked about DJ a little bit. You have a magic wand and you can just make Pantoja's next fight, and both people have to accept. What do you do for him next?
Oh, it absolutely would be DJ. There's nobody left on the active roster that's close to contention that he hasn't already beat. Royval, I would say, is probably on the active roster the most clear-cut contender who deserves a shot, but Pantoja's already beat him twice. I don't know. I guess probably the best fighter coming off of a win that he hasn't officially fought is Kai Kara-France, but he beat Kara-France on the Ultimate Fighter. So,
and we've seen what happens. And we saw what happens when he fights the dudes again that he already beat on the Ultimate Fighter. He goes and beats them 2 more times. Yep. Like it just kind of. Because I agree, I'm just like, fuck. You start. I have the world rankings like all the way out to like 25, and just like, okay, well, Horiguchi is not in the organization, and they're homies. Like that's the one dude that that's not gonna happen.
Yep.
Muhammad Makayev can't have a reasonable conversation with anybody. Tatsuro Taira can't win a fight. Brandon Moreno just won a fight, but he's lost 3 times. Kara-France has lost to him once already. Kara-France probably makes the most sense out of like, Amir Albazi just got absolutely shit kicked. Ursig got by Moreno. Ursig is coming off of 2 losses in a row. Asu Almabayev, Tagir Ulanbekov. We're getting into the fucking weeds here, man.
Yeah. Almabayev would need to win
3 fights.
Big name.
I think he's got to win like 3 fights,
At least 2. I think that they might be able to speed it up a little bit just because there is a lack of contenders. But yeah, no, but that's the point. There's nobody that you can look at and say, yeah, this fight makes all sorts of sense. It's a fresh new look. It's a bunch of guys that either don't deserve it or he's already beat.
And the problem is okay, if Asu Almabayev has to win 2 fights, they have to be 2 people ahead of him in the rankings. And it would have to be someone like a Kai Asakura or a Steve Ursig or an Amir Albazi or a Tatsuro Taira or a Car. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not sure I'm picking him to beat those guys. And then he's got to beat 2 of them.
Exactly. Like, there's no guarantee he wins those.
We're just stuck in this, like, and it's not Pantoja's fault for being a badass mofo. Like, it's not his fault at all. I agree. I think he should just talk all the shit to DJ. Maybe not talk all the shit, whatever. Just say whatever, because he's not a shit talking guy. But like, not number one. Another, like, he's there's always been kind of an argument of who's number 2 as the best flyweight ever. But like if Pantoja gets like 3 more title defenses or even 2, this conversation might change. Especially over the caliber of opponent. And Pantoja's never been knocked the fuck out like DJ was.
So
he's not hitting flying armbar. He's not hitting flying arm bars on Ray Borg, but like.
So, who would you say was the top 3 opponents that DJ beat during his title reign?
Damn. Just so I have, since you're gonna ask me that, I need to have his record here. And I'm just gonna look at his whole entire record, like his 3 best wins in the UFC.
I already know which 3 I think it is, and the top 3 are solid, but after that, with regards to his title defenses, it kind of falls off a cliff.
I would say probably Horiguchi, Cejudo. Mind you, Cejudo got one back. And Dodson.
I would trade out Horiguchi for Benavidez.
Yeah, or Joe B. It's really hard
and
for me.
The only reason I say that with Horiguchi is I think at that stage Horiguchi wasn't the best version of Horiguchi.
Yeah, I'm looking at it more of like what aged better, because man, it's hard for me to get past Joseph Benavidez fights with our guy Figgy.
Yeah. But yeah, but the thing is you could actually compare that with the top 3 wins for Pantoja. You know, you could say that Pantoja has
beat Brandon Randall 3 times.
Mm-hmm. I think that his second win over Roybal has been aging so much better as well. You know, because Roybal has been an absolute beast. He beat Moreno, and then he looked like a freaking beast against Tyra. Yeah, no, Pantoja has been an absolute dog.
He's really good, man. And we're not going to go down the whole list and compare, you know, tit for tat, but they're both like, before there was no one in the room, but like now Pantoja is not only in the room, but he's like sitting at the table. He's not at the head of the table, but like he's sitting at the table. He's sitting there with DJ. For us to be having this conversation clearly means he is sitting at the table. Yes. If I could, you know, do the magic wand, I would say Demetrius Johnson as well. Outside of that, like, if any champ on the roster deserves a double championship type fight, probably this dude. Like, and I hate to do the double champion thing, but like, it's also it's because no one else is there. When you beat, we always say we hate double championship fights. You have to clear out your whole division. He fucking did it.
No,
like, he's doing it. Like,
no, he is.
He's doing it. Like, there's
the only reason that I might put the brakes on that, and it has nothing to do with Pantoja. It's because bantamweight is so freaking deep, so stacked that I kind of, I don't know if I want to see Pantoja come up and fight him when there's so many other intriguing options. But if I'm being honest, I know that's kind of a crappy reason to put the brakes on Pantoja when, like you said, he has cleaned out the flyweight division pretty much. So yeah, I still think the best thing for him to do for his legacy is just pound the drum on DJ. And
I think it's lower risk. As incredible of an athlete as DJ is, and incredible of a fighter. And I know DJ's been fighting at 135. The Adriano Moraes, you know, his comeback win of Adriano Moraes is awesome. DJ had a cool fucking career at 1. But if he's got to go up and fight Merab Dvalishvili or Umar Nurmagomedov,
yep,
I think DJ is, out of the 3, I'd say DJ is the easier fight. And none of those fights are easy. More favorable. I'll use the term of the most favorable, which is, I mean, calling DJ your most favorable fight. You're in a, but good for Pantoja for putting himself in this position for us to be having this conversation. Asakura, what do you do with him next? We talked about him being probably overranked a little bit. What do you do with him next? Do you try to get him back to a title fight? Do you use his name now that he's fought for a title?
Well, one question that I have, and I don't know if I've necessarily heard others throw it out there, does Asakura want to stay at 125?
I think he's going to. My personal reasons, I think he's going to, because I think he is in a position to where 125, I'm not going to use the term easier, 125 I think still has the more favorable matchups. And he didn't seem crazy depleted, and I think he has a plug in with like one of the UFC PIs to help him get to that. Especially since he's fought for a belt already, I think he can kind of blow the whistle and make the right calls to stay in this division. Will he end his career in this division? Probably not.
Probably not.
Will his next 4 or 5 fights come at 125? I think so.
I think you're
unless
right
he
about
starts
that.
getting stomped out, which could totally fucking happen.
No, but I had to throw that out there just because he spent the last, I want to say 7 years fighting at 135.
Yeah.
And going back to 125 after 7 years, I would imagine that wasn't very easy for him to do. So I've kind of been like, I don't even know if he wants to hang around there, but yeah, I think he does, just because bantamweight is so stacked, and I think that the Sharks at bantamweight, it's more favorable to them in those matchups with Asakura than it is for him. So I think he stays at 125. I think what the UFC should do, they need to, I would say, match him up with somebody coming off of a loss. Try to get somebody back on a win, because we're talking about Pantoja, challenging DJ, but you never know in this sport. Pantoja could lose, and if Asakura scores an impressive win in his next contest, he very well could be right back in the mix. So I don't know, if Perez is healthy, I think that's a solid test for him. Otherwise, maybe Albazi.
And I think we're probably have the same mindset with matchmaking for him. I think in his situation, he got a big time Willy Wonka's golden ticket. He probably has a really, monetarily beneficial contract compared to Rizin. He probably has his contract's probably really good. So at this point, he got your title fight. You pulled up and got a title fight out of nowhere where there's plenty of dudes cutting their teeth. I think he should fight one of those dudes that are up and coming but have been cutting their teeth and deserve like a chance to fight a big name, and a guy coming off a win. I don't know if he's a top 10 flyweight in the world, because I feel like that's how it would look if Pantoja fought anyone in the, like Steve Erceg had a better fight with Pantoja. So I think he should fight someone like a Charles Johnson or someone like a Joshua Van and give one of those dudes an opportunity, because this division needs people to fight for a title. And we just had a conversation about guys like Asul Mabayev. And what the UFC needs is a flyweight fight that is going to look like a Charles Johnson versus Pantoja fight. Sorry, in the future, or like a Joshua Van. Like, flyweight needs exciting fights to keep this division alive. And Joshua Van looked incredible. He deserves a step up. Charles Johnson, look at the year he's had. He just knocked out Joshua Van. Both of those dudes are really exciting fighters. Kai Asakura might knock them both dead, but Kai Asakura and Joshua Van could put on a fucking really cool fight. Make it a 5-round co-main event on a big like fight night card somewhere. The UFC is going to Seattle in February. That's too soon. But, maybe they go back to Florida, or, they go to Denver or wherever, they go
Someplace
to
other than the
Alberta.
Apex, basically.
Yeah, like someplace on the road, and
Yeah.
put that shit as a 5-round co-main event, and we'll see where Asakura really is. And if he stomps Charles Johnson dead, or he stomps Joshua Van dead, well, they just lost to a dude that fought for the title. And if they won, Joshua Van goes out there and has a war with Kai Asakura and wins a decision. We're all going to be like round of applause, clapping, and thinking about an awesome fight. And people are going to be like, it's probably too early for him. Well, it was too early for Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg knocked out Matt Schnell and got a title fight. Call me crazy, but I'm just thinking about what fights are going to be exciting and cool. All right, moving on to the co-main. We had Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Ian Machado Garry. I will call him Machado Garry because after this fight, he has earned. I'm just kidding. Shavkat Rakhmonov leaves with a pretty tight decision win. His first decision of his career. He gets a 48-47. Before we get into the ins and outs of the fight was just kind of like one really long round. How did you have it scored?
48-47 for Shavkat.
I agree. I did as well. And I wouldn't be mad if you just like gave Shavkat all the rounds besides the 5th.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say it was the 3rd that I gave to Machado Garry as well, besides the 5th. But yeah, and that was a close round.
This fight, number one, just like, and I tweeted this out like after the 3rd round, and I always felt this way. Like, I don't understand. Bilal Muhammad is a dude that like I've never understood the hate on. Like, I really don't get it because he's not bad. And like, we were just paused and we were talking about like people that actually understand and know MMA. Like, Bilal Muhammad's fucking good at MMA. But like after the 3rd round, I'm like, yeah, I think Bilal Muhammad would probably beat both these guys. And I'd be pretty hard pressed to be convinced otherwise. Shavkat looked okay. Supposedly he had a knee injury, like an MCL, I believe, but I don't have proof or fact of that. And Ian Garry, I would say he surprised me with his takedown defense, but I could also say that I'm surprised by Shavkat's ineffectiveness with the takedowns. And I think it's literally 50-50. Ian Garry, like he said, proved to everyone that Shavkat's human. And yeah, this fight kind of, for me, was deflating for both guys a little bit. More for Shavkat, for me.
I can understand that. Shavkat heavily relied on big moments. I mean, if we're being honest, that's usually what he does. But first round very close until he lands. I want to say it was a big left at the end of the first.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. Anyway, very similar with the second round. Garry, I want to say outvolumed him in most of the rounds because he was steadily attacking with the leg kicks. But just at the end of those rounds, Rakhmonov just blasted him. I want to say the 4th round, he was able to get him onto the ground and control him for the most part. And they both spent a lot of time just kind of staring at one another, fakes and feints, waiting for the other one to make a big move and hope to be able to counter them. So I get where you're coming from, where you kind of feel a little bit deflated by their performance. But I also feel like while you're right that watching that, I feel even more confident in the idea that Bilal would win. I also think that this was a big learning experience for both of them, particularly Rakhmonov, given that he's the one that has next, because now he's gone to decision, and not only has he gone decision, he's gone 5 rounds, and fought a 25-minute fight. That's a pretty big deal. So getting that 5-round experience, I think, is going to be a net benefit to him heading into the Bilal fight. So I don't know. I'm a little bit mixed. I don't think you're wrong in the sense that the stock for both of them went down a bit, particularly Shavkat, because he almost had this mythical creature type feel to him heading into the fight. But I still think that overall it's a net benefit for him to have gone through this fight.
I was just surprised that he was, and I mentioned him earlier, and for some reason fans don't like Khabib in general. I don't know why. But like, and I'm going to use him for an example. Like, you would never see, and I'm using him for an example. Number one is although their games are different, they are both undefeated. I'm not sure if Rakhmonov will remain undefeated, but Khabib did. But as far as Rakhmonov had like 3.5 straight rounds of like only takedowns attempted from the clinch.
Yes.
None of them were successful. And he just continued to do it over and over again. And a great like Khabib, a great wrestler, someone that has an incredible grappling game. But like, when did you ever see Khabib just go to the same takedown sequence and have the same setups over and over again unsuccessfully? Like, championship level fighters don't run into the wall like fucking Samson over and over again until they break through. And that was Shavkat's method of fighting up to this fight, where he was just a battering ram, willing to, run himself. It's like a demolition car. Like, he's just willing to run himself into the wood chipper over and over again. And like, he had like literally like over 15 minutes of like the same similar setup, the same striking into the clinch, control against the cage, failed takedowns from the clinch over and over again. The second he went to a lower body takedown, like he went to Ian Garry's legs, he got him taken down and he did good damage from the ground and pound, but like it took him way too long to do that. And Ian Garry's great, but he's not some like game plan tactician fighter. Like, Bilal Muhammad is like a computer. Like, he's going to have a game plan. He's going to stick to it. He's extremely well schooled, and he will formulate a different game plan for each fighter. Ian Garry kind of just goes out there, and I don't think Ian Garry had a game plan going into this fight. And Shavkat's, he clearly had like a plan A and then like a plan G. He skipped all the other letters in between A and G. Like, it just took him so long to get to something that was more effective. And again, back to Khabib, like Khabib would chain so much different grappling offense and takedown offense that like he's getting you down to he's going to touch you and get you to the ground. Well, Bilal Muhammad, he is not Khabib Nurmagomedov, but he does train with them, and his camp alone. And I know we're supposed to be talking about Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I just, to watch a guy go out there and have a tit for tat striking match, kind of, he didn't bite on a single Ian Garry feint, but yet he just was like stuck at range, getting like leg kicked and oblique kicked. He did seem to be the one that was more dangerous, outside of like, the grappling on the mat, but I don't know. Like, I mean, these guys are lucky Usman's not in his prime anymore. Usman would be a prime Usman would be a nightmare for Shavkat Rakhmonov, because he'd just meet him in the pocket and meet him in the clinch. And maybe he wins or maybe he loses, but like, I don't know. I wasn't all the way convinced about Shavkat before because I've watched his fights and I'm like, okay, well, there was a fight pre-UFC, like on the regional scene, where he literally almost died and like another ref would have stopped it. The Jeff Neal fight where he was getting, taking way more shots than he needed to. Wonder Boy fight, like I watched that fight going into this fight week, and like Wonder Boy had his way with him on the feet until he, got him on the cage. But Wonder Boy was like 40. And maybe there's a reason why Shavkat Rakhmonov has all finishes. Because he fought Carlson Harris. He didn't fight Gilbert Burns or Vicente Luque. It's a good thing he didn't fight Hamzat, because I'd have picked Hamzat to beat him. Especially now. And I know I feel like I'm here like just dunking on Shavkat, but he's a huge favorite. Almost gets finished in the 5th round. And only for Ian Garry's like technical errors, like he should have brought his chin closer to the top of Shavkat's head to try to really lock up that choke. Yeah, I'm just, I don't know. I'm deflated. There's a lot of talk about this dude being an absolute killer. And I just didn't, I don't know if it was like a respect thing, but like when you're just stuck at range getting oblique kicked and then you're just trying to mug your way into the clinch and then you don't get the takedowns. I don't know. Turn me around, man.
Well, I remember the Neal fight, and I definitely remember the Wonder Boy fight as well. And you're absolutely right. Shavkat looked human in those fights, which is probably why I didn't feel too deflated with regards to his performance against Garry. It's because I felt like Shavkat looked human in those instances, but he's got that magic ability to pull that finish out of his ass, because I think the Neal fight, he was able to finish him with 20 seconds left, something like that. And when you're finishing every fight, it kind of erases a lot of what happened in the middle of the fight. People just kind of forgot the struggles that he had there because it's like, oh wow, he finished him too.
You're so
in
right.
That sense,
you're so right, because ESPN, and I'm sorry to cut you off, ESPN MMA in partner with the UFC will post a fucking post with like 12 different slides, and each one is like 15 to 40 seconds long, and it's just like a shit ton of finishing sequences. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, yeah, you're watching that like modified rear naked choke, bulldog choke type choke that he got over like Jeff Neal. But then if you like pause it and look at his face, it's like, okay, well, why is his face falling off? Both of them, like, why are both of their? And it's like, well, yeah. And honestly, Jeff Neal's a really tricky southpaw, and he's a good boxer, but he's also like a one-handed fighter as well. There's just a lot of imperfection, and like you said, man, that highlight reel really, just hits the backspace button on everything that happened prior to that. But this was like a Shavkat Rakhmonov fight, just without the finish.
Yeah. No, and that's what I was gonna say. And the other part of it is I think because he's been able to get those finishes, he's been able to maintain that mythical creature status, so to speak. And I think that with something like this, he's been getting criticized, and I'm sure that he's not going to be able to avoid hearing about it this time. It's not a loss, but he could very well end up treating it like a loss and make some of the adjustments that needs to be made for him to become a title contender. And that's kind of what I meant when I said he went to decision. He might go back to his team and say, I didn't get the finish. What do I need to do different? Because that's who I am. I'm Shavkat. I finish everybody, and I didn't here. So I think that it might have been a blessing in disguise for him that Belal ended up getting hurt, so that he can actually get a little bit more seasoning, and hopefully he uses this performance to kind of reevaluate some things. Because in terms of physical skills, I think he could. I think he'd more likely win Belal if they were just, based on physicality. But like you said, Belal is if not the smartest fighter in the sport. He's one of the smartest fighters in the sport. He's absolutely in the discussion at the very least. So he's going to have a game plan to be able to stop Shavkat. What Shavkat needs to do, though, is find a way to be able to land that big shot, because Belal, it's not that Belal's not durable, but he can be put to sleep.
He's hurtable.
Luke, yeah.
He's
hurtable.
You know,
Luque put him to sleep. And given that instinct, Rakhmonov can finish him, and I think that this type of performance can help him to become the better fighter he needs to be to beat Belal. So even though I agree with you, he looked more human in this fight, I think overall it's a good thing for him that he took this fight, and I think he's got a better chance of beating Belal. I still, at this point, would pick Belal. I would have heading into the fight prior to all this happening, but I think Shavkat's got a better chance now.
I'm for Shavkat Rakhmonov's sake, because there is rumblings that he went into this fight with a knee injury. He's lucky he didn't have to he's lucky he didn't fight Belal Muhammad. Because Belal Muhammad had the 5th round against Leon Edwards where he got reversed and he got elbowed a ton and he took some damage there. But like his forward pressure and his boxing, like he also like pieced up Leon Edwards, and he looked like fast, and like his boxing looked good in that fight, which is just strange. But it's like Belal Muhammad is just not weird, like just a kind of unassuming dude that does way better work than you ever expect him to, until you start to respect his work. It's kind of one of those things with him. So we talk about what's next for Shavkat. It seems to be Belal, but I'm actually not sure it's going to be Belal, especially after this fight. Ian Garry, what does Ian Garry do next? This is his first loss. He doesn't walk away looking great, because I think this is his like ceiling as far as his abilities in fight. But that doesn't mean he can't beat other dudes in this division. He's beaten everyone else he's fought in this division.
If I'm the UFC, I throw him a bone for the fact that he did take the fight on relatively short notice. I know that he was originally scheduled to be fighting this upcoming weekend, so it's just a week ahead of it, a week sooner than what he was anticipated to fight. But he stepped up when others wouldn't or didn't. Everybody's been talking crap on Usman. I don't know why he didn't take the fight, so I'm not going to say anything with regards to that. He's got his own reasons. So I say that they should still give him a high-profile fight. And the one that I want to see, because I feel like he looked very flat in his last fight, is Leon Edwards. I think Garry and Edwards would be a fun stylistic fight. Don't get me wrong, I understand it could potentially be a snoozer, but it's one that I still think could be very intriguing. If you can get the two of them on the right day, it'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, it could be a lot of staring too, I have to admit.
Yeah, jeez. There's 2 fights that I'd like to see Ian Garry in. Usman did come out and kind of say that he was offered the fights, but like he just wasn't healthy, and he's had so many health issues, like his knee problems, and he said he wants to get healthy, and he said he wants to fight again. If Usman can get healthy, I would love to see him fight Ian Garry. I think that would be, if Ian Garry gets a win over a guy like Usman, he could fight for a title fight. He could argue that. And if Usman gets a win over Ian Garry, he could do the same. Or I think Sean Brady deserves a shot at someone above him, what would be above him in the rankings. So I think Ian Garry versus Sean Brady. Sean Brady is another dude that will go out there and stick to a game plan. Is he Belal Muhammad? No. But he's kind of like a junior version of Belal Muhammad in many ways. I'd be curious to see what he would do against a guy that would push the pace and push grappling on him. Very curious to see if he could, thwart that off. Pretty cool fight. And I kind of came here and dunked on it quite a bit, but we weren't sold Wolf tickets, but like feel like I was told one thing and was shown another. UFC 310 was a really cool card. Unfortunately, we only are going to talk about 3 fights. We're not going to talk about the Volkov robbery. And it's a robbery because I'm angry about it. I'm assuming you scored the fight.
I scored it for Volkov. Okay. I did do a quick rewatch of round 2, and it was closer than I do remember, but I still think Volkov was the rightful winner.
It's because you're not blind. It's like, what the hell? But no, we're going to talk about probably like the most fun fight on the card, in my opinion. No, it's not the Joshua Van fight. Joshua Van had an awesome fight. But we're going to talk about Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. Evloev wins another decision by the freaking skin of his teeth, and does defeat Aljamain Sterling 29-28. Was it a split or unanimous decision? I actually don't remember.
I believe it was a unanimous decision.
But it was close, man. Like a super close fight. I have never been a dude that's been like super high on Aljamain Sterling. I really respect his abilities and his game, but I think even more than the Corey Sandhagen fight, like to me, this is like his most impressive fight, and people are going to call me crazy, but I didn't think he had a shot against dudes up at 145. Again, call me crazy, but I was just like, he got one-shotted by one backstep counterpunch by Sean O'Malley. Like, this dude's done. Like, he's had back injuries, and like he's not going to do anything at 45. Then he goes out there and then kind of like has a boring fight, but dog walks Calvin Kattar, and then comes out here and really keeps up and out grapples Evloev in large portions of this fight, and gets like great takedowns, like shooting at range, completely outstruck Evloev too. Numerically, no, but like on the feet when they were striking, like in the first round, he was walking them down. And Evloev had this really tricky sambo. That one takedown he took from the back where he had like a rear waist cinch, and he like leans back and kicks the back leg out and kind of tosses Aljo over. This was like, you said it, I think either before we were recording or while we were recording in the beginning of the show, that this was like one of the best like grappling fights you've seen in a while.
Yes.
This fight was cool as fuck.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. And the UFC crapped on it by throwing it on the prelims.
And it's just because like Dana White bet money on Arnold Allen and like lost and said that was like a terrible fight, and then like hates Aljo. I don't know why he hates Aljo so much. I think there's been like contract issues and bad negotiations maybe with Aljo, and
there
then just his like random downright and just outright hate for Evloev. But that third round, man, Aljo just going for stuff, getting a little overzealous, getting stuck on bottom, and then Movsar knew how to win this fight, and that's why he's undefeated. He is not an undefeated fighter like Shavkat Rakhmonov. You can go to Movsar's record and even against dudes like Nick Lentz and Arnold Allen, he's got Diego Lopez. Like he wins a lot of these fights by the skin of his teeth, but that means he knows how to win them. Like the second he got top position, he didn't give up control, but he's like, I need to land punches here, even if they're rabbit punches, even if there's something. I need to show these judges that I'm. In that third round, Aljo had like 3 minutes of like 3 minutes of control, but like no damage done. He got two slams in. But Movsar had like 1 minute and 45 of control, but just landed like 50 little ground and pound shots. He knows how to win. He knows how to play the game. No USADA Movsar, no sugar Movsar. He's fucking shredded, dude. Like,
yeah, no. When I saw how shredded he was, I was like, oh boy, is he still going to be able to scramble the way that he usually does? Because usually you see him bulk up that way. They're not quite as fluid as they are, but his fluidity did not seem to suffer at all. And, like you said, you don't when Sterling was at 135, I didn't think of him as a quick scrambly son of a bitch. I thought of him. What's that?
Like a quick scrambling shot wrestler. Like his shots from distance were so fast. Like, because normally he's more of like an entanglement, like take your back against the cage type of dude.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say. Normally he would entangle his opponent, and, he's called the Funk Master for a reason. But I think moving up to 145 allowed him to kind of regain the speed advantage that he had when he was younger. Because, I remember watching him when he first came into the UFC, and you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who was quicker in the scrambles. And he's gotten older. He's in his mid-30s at this point. He's slowed a little bit. And I think that showed in some of his performances, particularly against O'Malley. He was getting by on guts and guile when he was the champion against Cejudo. But I think that he's been able to get that advantage in terms of speed and in some cases, like obviously against Cater, athleticism. And I think that the move to 145 is actually breathing in new life into his career. I don't think he's going to become the champion again. But I think that he can have a lot more fun fights at 145 than what he would if he were to stay at 135. So I think this has been a great move for his career. And like you said, he came this close to getting the win. Like you said, it was just Evloev being smarter with regards to saying what's the number one criteria, damage. So those 50 small shots that he landed certainly outdid Sterling's 5 or 10 in that round, whatever it was. But yeah, no, just fantastic fight. Happy that they were able to steal the show and kind of put a little bit of a middle finger to Uncle Dana. Yeah, great fight.
This was a big, like, put some fucking respect on my name type fight, and they actually took like pictures together. Did you see him after the fight? Aljo and Movsar were like hanging out, talking about the fight. For as terribly as Aljo has acted after wins in the past, like this is one of his best. Like, it's so crazy, and I feel for Aljo big time because he's finally seems to be like, I don't want to say adored by the fans, but like he seemed to have garnered some respect. Like people like him, people are talking about him, and then now he's like coming out today and saying like, I don't know if I want to climb the ladder again. I'm getting older. And like, he's talking about potential retirement. And I'm just like, fuck, people finally like this dude. He's finally put the Petrion stuff in the rear view, and it's too late. I don't think it's too late. I think if these dudes rematched, I'd probably pick Aljamain Sterling because Movsar fought the perfect fight and took advantage of one mistake that Sterling made. But like, I think Sterling could just win this fight by like defending takedowns and just striking. Like he clearly has better striking than Movsar on the feet, especially in the first round. Movsar could barely touch him. He couldn't deal with the speed. He couldn't deal with the range striking. Even like Aljo's boxing looked good. I think at 45, he seems more confident. And I think it's because he knows that he doesn't have to cut the weight. And I think he's stronger at 45. He was like even bigger than Movsar. Like after, like they're taking pictures together after, like he's taller and of stature, larger. Something a lot of people forget though is Movsar actually had a very long career at bantamweight pre-UFC for M1 Global. He was the champ there at bantamweight. So both of these dudes are technically bantamweights that have moved up. Yeah. But I mean, that doesn't mean anything. Like they're Aljo's strength, like he seemed to be, I don't know if I could say he's the better grappler, but their grappling is like dead fucking even on skills and ability. Like if those dudes were to have like a submission wrestling match, like it's just they're gonna just sub each other out 1-to-1 forever, or it'll just go on forever and nobody will ever win or nobody, but I think Aljo's like, I actually think in a way, Aljo's probably like the all-around better fighter than Movsar. Movsar is just an undefeated fighter that knows how to win, and shout out to him. What's next for these dudes? Aljamain Sterling, he's talking about retirement. He's saying he doesn't know if he wants to climb the ladder again, but like, I don't think matchmaking wise, like you matchmake him like a loss. He's a former champion.
So, I will say this. There was a part of me that wanted to see Sterling get his hand raised. Like I scored the fight for Evloev, the exact same reasons that you gave. You know, I feel like he just barely put it over the top. But had Sterling won, I think that the obvious match would have been Sterling and Diego Lopez. And just remembering what the scramble fest it was between Lopez and Evloev, that just kind of had me drooling. I was like, ooh, Sterling and Lopez. Another one of those fights that would have just been great.
Why can't they do that? Because Movsar's beat them both.
I understand that, but the problem is that everybody's talking about Lopez being next for Ilia. Next for Ilia after the Volk fight. And I can't say that it doesn't make sense, but I think a rematch between Evloev and Lopez makes more sense with the title as a title eliminator. So I don't think that it's the right thing to do, just given the circumstances. You know, it only makes sense for one of them to go in there and get the next shot. So it's still possible down the road we could get Sterling and Lopez, say Evloev wins, and then, you know, you got Lopez coming off a loss. Maybe Sterling wins his next fight. But, yeah, as far as, you know, you said don't treat him as though he's coming off of a loss. And in my mind, I was trying to think of what would be another fun fight that I want to see him with. And like you said, don't treat it like it's coming off a loss. So somebody, the name that I liked, it is somebody who is also coming off a loss, but it's also somebody who's higher up in the ranks. So in that sense, Sterling's kind of getting a little bit of a reward. I think it would be fun to see what he could do with Yair Rodriguez.
I love it. I was going to say put him up against Yair Rodriguez or Brian Ortega or Arnold Allen, like one of those three dudes. And then Movsar, I think he should maybe rematch Diego Lopez, or, you know, Max Holloway is going to be up at 55.
And Ortega might be too, which is why I didn't go with the Ortega route. But yeah, you know, he's staying there.
And I think Josh Emmett has a fight booked.
Ooh, I haven't heard that, so I'll be interested to see what that is.
I can't recall off the top of my head. But like, don't do Aljamain Sterling dirty. Don't put him against like Gene Silva when Gene Silva goes out there and murks freaking Melsik Bagdasarian or something like that. Don't do that to him, please. You know, because like I would not. I just don't want to see Aljo fighting a dude like that. But there's plenty of old dudes at 145. Like, just like you said, Yair Rodriguez makes the most sense. Really cool fight, man. And the big middle finger to the UFC matchmakers, and not the matchmakers, but, you know, the UFC and how they do their bout order. There's got to be some science and some algorithm that I'm not smart enough to understand on why they do that. Or sometimes they just want to give the fighter the middle finger. But this time the fighters gave it back. It's getting a lot of chatter online. It was all around a really cool ass fight. That wraps up the first segment of the show. Out with the old. We got one quick topic to talk about. Just some stuff that's going viral today on social media. Middle segment of the show, what's hot? We are going to talk about the aforementioned Ilia Topuria and 145 and him talking about going up to 155. Today he came out and said that he would like to go up to 155 and fight Charles Oliveira, and he wants to get a fight with Islam Makhachev. I think it's awesome that a champ wants to go up and get his feet wet and fight the number one contender of the division to earn his fight with the champion. Ilia Topuria, man, just a guy doing, number one, he's on a rampage trying to knock out everyone's favorite fighter. And he's doing all the right things, saying all the right stuff. What do you think?
Ilia is not a dumb guy. I think he knows that he's not going to get that fight right away. But I think that by talking about it, by planting that those seeds, he's more likely to get it down the road. Main reason I say that is featherweight is very much a Shark Tank. He's got a couple of guys that are ready for their opportunities. You've got one of the, we'll say, Volk's might be the featherweight GOAT, and he's more or less seemed to have promised him that he would give him another shot. They had them meet in the cage after Topuria knocked out Holloway. So it looks like that's next. I think he's planting seeds more than anything. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea. But yeah, I think that's what this is about more than anything.
Ilia Topuria is a guy that I could totally see, and we've seen other fighters do this, like Max Holloway, for example. Even though he went up to 155 and lost to Dustin Poirier, he came back down and still defended against Frankie Edgar, defended his 145-pound title. I could totally see Ilia Topuria. He's not a big, not a lot of people know this, and I'm sure you do, but Ilia Topuria was supposed to debut in the UFC on short notice at 135 against Petr Yan. And he's not even Ilia's not a big 45er. He's like one of the smaller ones.
Yes.
So he is a dude that if you tell me, hey, Devin, pick a guy on the roster that's going to go up and down weight classes and have a lot of success, I'd probably pick him.
He could.
When I say have success, I don't mean win every fight and become champion, but wouldn't hate his odds.
So I think back to a couple of years ago when he took that fight with Jai Herbert. Herbert's he's a respectable lightweight, but he's no world beater.
You're being nice.
And Topuria had problems with him before he was finally able to put him away. Now, granted, that was a couple of years ago. I think Topuria is definitely a better fighter since that point. More intelligent fighter, for sure. But that's still, there's that in the back of my mind that it's plausible that the size difference, because like you said, he was originally supposed to come in at 135. Moving up to 155, I think, would be a big leap. Now, I'm not saying that he couldn't do it, but it is something that's still in the back of my mind. So I say, let him beat, let him fight Volk.
Is that guaranteed though? I know they're going to Australia next year. Is that fight signed on the dotted line?
It's not signed, but Volk hasn't budged on anything else, and he kind of it looks like he believes that the UFC owes him a favor because he took that second fight with Makhachev on short notice. Hasn't quite looked the same since. Well, granted, he only had the fight with Topuria since then, but regardless, I think that he's acting as though the UFC owes him a favor, very much like the way that we'll say that Tyron Woodley was acting. After Johnny Hendricks missed weight, he was like, no, the next title shot's mine. The next title shot's mine. And I think that Volk has something in the back room with the UFC that he's going to get that fight.
Now, do you think it's a title fight, or do you think it's a fight with Ilia Topuria, or do you think Ilia Topuria goes, hey, UFC, you need a title fight for UFC 316. I'll fight Charles Oliveira for the BMF belt at 155. And then Volk gets a shot to still fight for a title, but maybe it's an interim title. And he goes and has to take that fight against Diego Lopez. And maybe that happens in Australia. Because maybe he's only promised a title fight. Maybe he's not promised a rematch against you know,
It's
and then
possible.
that's where things get, in my opinion, get a little bit, because Topuria seems like he's becoming a star. And based on abilities, like when I look at 155, like probably pick, I think I might pick Topuria just off the top of my head. Like, I think I might pick him to beat everyone besides Islam.
I'd pick Sarukian over him.
I'm not it's a good fight, but I'm not confident in that.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm just saying, yeah, that's not me saying, oh no, Sarukian manhandles him. That's me saying I pick Sarukian. Not that I guarantee he's going to win.
I love Dustin Poirier and I love Justin Gaethje, but like they do not want to get into a pocket boxing match with Ilia Topuria.
No, they've seen better days. So against them, I probably would pick Ilia. But Makachev, Sarukian, probably Chucky Olives as well. I think I'd probably pick them over Ilia, but you know we're getting deep into the weeds with that.
And I think Ilia club and subs Charles Oliveira. I think he hurts him really bad on the feet and is not scared to follow him into his guard and hits him with a head and arm choke or elbows and punches his head off. Yeah, it's just for him to go up to 155 just makes things so much more exciting going into 2025. And I think you're right. I think he's just setting the table. I don't know if he is, planning, but him going to 155 wouldn't be the worst thing for 145. Diego Lopez can fight Volkanovski for an interim belt, or they can just have a number one contenders fight. If an interim belt will appease Volk and get him to fight Diego Lopez in Australia, so be it. I just think it opens the door for so much more cool fights. And I do see Topuria, eventually going up there. I think he wants to fight Islam. That's what his tweet or whatever, that's what he wants to do. And if that's what he wants to do, that's what I want him to do. If he wants to fight Charles Oliveira, I want to see him fight Charles Oliveira. And I'm only speaking about this with like 2 hours of knowledge that he even wants to do this. So I'm just speculating and I'm going off the cuff. He could go up to lightweight and get fucking smoked by Dustin Poirier in a all out brawl. It's Dustin Poirier by all means. But with Ilia talking about going to 155, it just puts a smile on my face, makes me excited for his future, because he's such a cool ass fighter, and 155 is just a cool ass division. All right, guys, UFC Tampa, final segment of the show. In with the new. This card is headlined by Joaquin Buckley taking on Colby Covington. Kind of a weird short notice put together fight, and a 14 fight card. It's 14, right? Yeah, I think
13 at this point.
13, okay. Pretty good card for the final card of the year, fight night. They're in Tampa, live venue there. I'm going to talk about 3 of the fights. We're not going to talk about Cub Swanson and Billy Q. You and I had a conversation pre-recording on what we wanted to talk about. We decided on Adrian Yanez versus Daniel Marcos. That's the first fight we're going to talk about. This fight is being contested at men's bantamweight. The odds on this fight, Adrian Yanez is a kind of moderate favorite. Sorry, underdog. He's coming in at plus 150. Daniel Marcos, the minus 180, some places minus 185 favorite. This is a good fight and a pretty cool fight. Daniel Marcos is one of the dudes that's like one of the kind of most hush undefeated dudes on the roster, especially in a stacked ass division as bantamweight. And he's from Peru. Do we even have any other Peruvians? Oh, we have James Lontop. Daniel Marcos is definitely performing better than James Lontop, or James Lontop, as he's undefeated 16-0. His last time out, he had a decision win against John Castaneda. Prior to that, he had that weird groin kick of Arichi Lang. Really close fight against Davey Grant. But he did have that really nice finish against Simon Oliveira. That was back in 2023. Adrian Yanez, he's a dude that he's actually the first MMA fighter I've ever interviewed. And I interviewed him right off of the Contender series. I reached out to him on a previous show that I did. If you're interested, shoot me a DM. My handle's there, and I'll send it to you. But he was on a little bit of a skid, man. You know, he was on this incredible 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He was on this incredible 9-fight winning streak. You know, that knockout win against Tony Kelly was like a chef's kiss knockout. But after that, he had that really tough knockout loss to Rob Font, where most of us expected to go out there and he himself expected to go out there and storm Rob Font's castle. He did not. He got fucked up and knocked out. And then after that, he looked really bad against Jonathan Martinez and kind of just got leg kicked to bits. And he seemed like he was going into that fight with an injury. I know he was like 26, 27 years old, running Metro Fight Club all by himself, and maybe a little older than that, maybe 29 at the time. But he seems to have come around a lot since that Vinicius Salvador fight. That was kind of a fight that was set up for him to win. Vinicius Salvador coming up from men's flyweight. But either way, Adrian Yanez, he's back in the winning column. He's not undefeated, but I think this is a really cool fight. And I think this fight could tell us a lot from each of the guys. Tell me what you think about the fight. Tell me who you think's going to win.
It's a hard fight to pick. In terms of pure boxing, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who's cleaner in MMA than Yanez. Very, very clean, very slick, very fast hands. But this isn't boxing. Font exposed that, and Martinez exposed that even more. And I want to believe that Yanez has learned some lessons from that. You know, at this point, like you said, he's no longer running the gym. I believe that what's his name? Eve Edwards. I want to say that Eve Edwards is the one that's now his coach.
Yeah, Eve Edwards,
so that he can.
That's his head coach now.
And Eve's a damn good MMA mind. You know, he's old school, but at the same time, he's had a long association with the American Top Team. He's absorbed a lot from them. So I think that he's a perfect choice to be able to come down there, help.
Thug Jitsu?
Dude. Yes. You know, and at one point he was the uncrowned lightweight champion in the UFC. I think people forget that from back in the day, but yeah, you know, Yanez needed that weight lifted off his shoulders. And even though he looked good against Salvador, like you said, that was 100% a fight set up to get him back on track. Mm-hmm. So I take that one with a grain of salt. Even when they rushed him in against Font, I admit I picked Yanez, but I still had a lot of questions about what the UFC was doing, because the names that he beat on his way up there, Victor Rodriguez, Gustavo Lopez, Randy Costa, Davey Grant, and Tony Kelly. The only one of those that is still on the roster is Davey Grant. He kind of was given a fairly easy path. That doesn't mean that he's not talented, but with regards to Marcos, I kind of slept on Marcos when he first came in. I'll be the first to admit that. And I think a lot of, like you said, he's one of the lesser known undefeated still in the UFC. And so I think with that admission itself, there's a lot of people that are sleeping on him. It's hard to say who's got the most impressive win. Both of them have wins over Davey Grant, and that's probably the best one for each of them. What I have seen out of Marcos is the ability to make adjustments. He's got some. I don't want to say he's got the same type of power that Yanez does in the fist, but I think he's got a more diverse attack. And he does have the power that he can put Yanez out, and we've seen that Yanez can be touched up and put to sleep. It's really hard for me to say, because I want to trust that under the tutelage of Eve that Yanez is going to make the adjustments, and that he's going to be the star that everybody thought he was going to be at one point. But I think so many people are sleeping on Marcos, and he's hungry, and I've seen improvements out of him in each fight. If I'm going off of what I have been seeing, I've got to pick Marcos, and that's with a big grain of salt.
I like it. I mean, it's hard to pick against a dude that's undefeated, especially at this division, even though, his first 11 fights prior to the Contender Series were all kind of just, like 80% of the fights on his record are from a organization called 300 Sparta.
Yeah.
And I love Peruvian regional MMA just because there's so many wild, crazy fucking dudes. Peruvian MMA is just all fun. But there's a big difference between, the dudes he was fighting in the Peruvian regional scene and even the guys he's fighting in the UFC. And once he's got to the UFC, like Simon Oliveira, he's also not in the UFC anymore. And he did win that fight. At least I don't think he is. He hasn't really fought as of lately. And then Davy Grant, they both have split decisions over Davy Grant in both really close fights. And I think Davy Grant did actually beat. I think Davy Grant got shafted in that Daniel Marcos fight. I went back and watched it, and I'm just like, ooh, this is bad. And it was like overseas too, which is weird. Like it was in Davy Grant's backyard.
Yeah.
And he got like still shafted, which I mean, like he got shafted just as bad as Volkov did. Like it doesn't matter as much as the Volkov fight, but like I do think Davy Grant should have clearly won that fight. Arichi Lang is Arichi Lang. Like I think Adrian Yanez would smoke him too.
Agreed.
And then John Castaneda is a good fighter, but I also think Adrian Yanez would probably beat him too. So
agreed.
Tit for tat, they both have really similar, and I would say Adrian Yanez has definitely fought the better guys, especially in the UFC. Like Jonathan Martinez even is better than anyone,
and Font.
And Font. My concerns I think Adrian Yanez watched the Jose Aldo fight and watched the Chito Vera fight with Rob Font, and he was like, I'm going to be the one to finish this dude. These guys hurt him so much. I'm just going to go out there and get into the fucking pocket with him and brawl. And Font was like, actually, I have a really long reach for bantamweight, and I've got huge fists, and I'm really good at hockey fighting, and I am just going to grab you with an overhook and punch you a lot. Yanez is not the biggest bantamweight and not the most physical, but he is really good at meeting people in the pocket, and he is in tit for tat boxing exchanges in the pocket. You're gonna find people. It's gonna be tough to find dudes that can, meet a guy like Adrian Yanez. Daniel Marcos is a guy that he will outfight if he needs to, but he's not scared to get into the pocket. He's got a good kicking game. He's got a good range game, but he's also himself a little reckless. And he's, for a 16-0 fighter, he's got a very like regional Russian 16-0 type record where like it's 16-0, but like, what does that mean? I'm going to take a flyer on Adrian Yanez. Because number one, I do actually think in a 3-round fight, he can meet Marcos in the pocket. And if he doesn't, he cannot fight this fight at kicking range, let alone leg kicking range. Leg kicking range is a little bit closer than kicking range. But like, if you go look at Adrian Yanez's fights where he dusts dudes in the pocket, it's at punching range. This fight needs to take place in punching range. And I think Marcos may be willing to meet him there. And if he's not willing to meet him there, I don't know if Marcos is well schooled enough to keep it away from there. Give me Adrian Yanez to be the first person to like hurt and drop Daniel Marcos. And I think under Eve Edwards, this proper tutelage away from Metro Fight Club over the, oh my gosh, first name, I can't recall, last name, Solis, his head coach.
Saul Solis.
Saul Solis. I was going to call him Paul. Saul Solis, I think he can, that's kind of in the rear view. I think he's over grieving. I'm sure he's never going to be over it, but I think he's on to brighter futures. I think that Vinicius Oliveira fight was a good fight for him to kind of gain some confidence back. And quite frankly, that's what the Arichi Lang fight was for Daniel Marcos as well. Even though he, it's a no contest due to a ball kick. But I'm going to take a flyer on Yanez, and I like his game better, and I want to see someone with his game succeed a little bit more. We're split here, so we'll have something to talk about after the fights. Moving on, we are going to talk about men's flyweight. Number one, it's a hot topic this week, and I think this fight will potentially give us some, not clarity in the division, but maybe we get another contender. We've got Manel Kopp taking on Bruno Silva. Let me give you the odds for this fight. All right. Manel Kopp's a big favorite here. He's a minus 350 favorite, is the biggest I can find him. Bruno Silva plus 275 is the underdog.
That's too wide.
It's too wide just because it's men's flyweight and it's Manel Kopp. Bruno Silva's picture, like his profile picture on Sherdog, it looks like his arms are like 14 inches long. Like, he's got to have one of the shorter male reaches. But Bruno Silva, man, he's coming off of he lost 2 fights in a row against David Dvorak and Tagir Ulanbekov. Like, he got out wrestled by Ulanbekov. That was back in 2020, but Ulanbekov is good, man. You know, he comes from one of the best camps in MMA history. Eagles MMA, Team Nurmagomedov. Like, it's again, I'm hyping this team. I'm talking about them again, but pretty good fucking camp to be Russian and fight out of. After that, he knocked out JP Buys. Everyone does, but whatever. Knocked out Victor Rodriguez. Shout out to Victor Rodriguez. I think he had 1 fight in the UFC, and I think that was it. And then Tyson Nam, he squeezed his head off, and Cody Durden, he knocked him out. So he's on a 4-fight win streak with all 4 finishes. Manel Kopp. Kopp is a guy that's just been so freaking wishy-washy. He's coming off of a loss to Muhammad Makayev, where in a loss, Muhammad Makayev gets cut from the UFC. Before that, he had a way closer fight than he needed to against Felipe Dos Santos, who has since lost fights, beat David Dvorak. He knocked out Zaga Zumagulov. He's supposed to do that. And then before that, he knocked out Ode Osborne. But his first 2 fights in the UFC, he lost them both back-to-back. Kind of giving the rundown on these guys. Let me know what you think about the fight and tell me who you think is going to win. So, and tell me about the odds again.
Oh, God.
Because they're stupid. Kopp shouldn't be minus 345 against a single dude in the top 15 of the UFC in this division.
No. I don't want to say that Kopp is the flyweight version of Michael Johnson, because he hasn't reached that level of
wishy-washiness
yet. Yeah. But he's getting close to that, because he's.
But even more abilities than Michael Johnson.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I was going to say. He's one of the, if not the most physically gifted flyweight on the roster. I don't say that with any hyperbole. The guy's as explosive of an athlete as there is, and he has ungodly power that you don't find it in a 125er this side of John Lineker or Figgy.
Yeah,
but he's just. He's eminently frustrating just because he's too patient at times. He depends way too much on the big moment. It's difficult for him to win rounds because he doesn't consistently attack. He waits for the fight to come to him. And don't get me wrong, there's obviously times to do that, but you've got to be more consistent with your output, particularly at flyweight, because while he does have that ungodly power, it's still not like he's knocking out his opponents the way that Derek Lewis does it, or Francis Ngannou. He's a flyweight, so even if you do have ungodly power, you're still generally going to have to win points.
He doesn't even have the knockdowns that Figgy has, though. Like Figgy has ungodly power for a flyweight, but Figgy has as many knockdowns or more than Ngannou now.
That's true.
So it's not. It's like a. And I'm sorry to interject, but I'm going to let you go on. But I think I found Manel Kopp's problem, and I think I finally figured it out. But that's all I'll say.
Okay. No, that's fine. But no, he really is eminently frustrating, because if there's anybody that you can look at is he in the UFC's official top 10? Let's see really quick.
He's got to be.
Okay, so he's barely in there. He's at number 9 for the UFC. So if there's anybody on there that I think that the UFC would probably be willing to give Pantoja a rematch with, because Cop debuted in the UFC against Pantoja. That tells you how much they thought of Cop when he was signed. I think that he's the one that they would want to give the rematch to, just because he has that type of ability. They think that he can be a star. I think that they're starting to run out of patience with him, which is, I think this fight against Silva is kind of an indication of that, because he either turns in a performance where he craps the bed like he did with Muhammad Mokaev, or he blows weight. Like he was supposed to fight Matthews Nicolau and missed weight so bad enough that Nicolau wasn't taking the fight. So Cop is
in a rematch against a dude that already beat him.
Yes. They're giving Cop every opportunity to be a star, and he keeps pissing it away. Whereas Silva, he was this close to being cut. I think did he lose his first two?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so a no contest, and then he lost his next two. So in his first 3 UFC performances, he did not have a win. So he was on the verge of getting cut, and then all of a sudden goes on this insane run. He's not only won his last 4 contests, he's finished his last 4 contests. And that fight with Durden was nuts. I think people forget that one. Just
Durden was fucking him up, man.
Yes, exactly.
Durden was putting the screws to him. It was like, I'm like, this is again, I'm interjecting, but I'm like, Cody Durden's pitching a shutout here.
Yep. And then just when you think Silva's on death's door, he's able to pull the victory out of his ass. I mean, I think that's one of the more underrated fights of the year. Like, I know it's not going to win fight of the year, but damn it, if I feel like it shouldn't have at least been in the conversation. That was an amazing fight.
At least comeback of the year. Like comeback win. Like, with all that being said, technically, who do you favor? What do you think? This is a really hard fight to call, man. It's really hard.
It is. And
with the odds too, like, if you're betting $100, $10, whatever,
if I'm betting, I'm putting my money on Silva based on those odds. Like when you're betting, you play the odds, and these odds are way off. As a pick, I'm leaning towards Cop, just because I think that he knows that the UFC is at their wits' end with him. I think that he knows that this is do or die for him if he wants to get a serious chance to go for the title. And I think that there's a good chance that we see the best version of Cop. The type of Cop that we saw when he knocked out O'Day Osborne. He knew that he had to make a good impression. I think he's in a similar position here. And I think that I believe he's got a reach advantage on Silva. I don't think he's a better grappler, but I think that he's athletic enough that he can avoid having Silva take him to the mat with great frequency. And even if Silva does get him down, I think Cop can bounce back up, because I'm not going to say that Cop's a great grappler, but he's defensively savvy enough. Like he was able to survive against Mokaev, and Mokaev's a solid grappler.
Mokaev barely took him down. Barely couldn't even get into entrances.
Exactly. So I think that Cop gets this win, but like we said, there's a difference between who are you picking in a fight and who are you betting on in a fight. In this fight, I'm 100% betting on Silva, just because the odds are so stupid, and Silva has that type of fight-ending power. But I'm picking Cop.
It makes sense. Like, so I'm going to pick Cop in this fight too, but really tentatively, because I think I finally realized Cop's problem is that he just spent way too long fighting in Japan, where in Rizin, like he knocked out Kai Asakura and Tsugaya Mizugaki like back to back in 2019. And then he disappeared for 2 years, came to the UFC and lost those fights. But like if you watch the Pantoja fight, he lost because he just got out volumed. And Kop's major problem is he's a 125er, but dude, you're trying to fight like Yoel Romero at fucking flyweight. And like it's just not gonna happen. Like he is way too low volume for a flyweight in the UFC. Like he has this Japanese MMA game that's like a lot more low volume and centered on, you know, high points, different scoring criterias, things like that. Like he does not have a volume game. And his problem is he did have a volume game with Felipe Dos Santos. And like, yeah, he won, but like he got buzzed a bunch in that fight by Felipe Dos Santos, who was a dude that pulled up on short notice that was like 21 years old and has since lost.
And I think that the reason why he was able to have a volume game in that contest, I don't think he had any respect for Dos Santos.
And it's just because Dos Santos was like, we're having a volume game.
Yep.
If he didn't fight back, he had to fight back. It was kind of one of those, he didn't push that game. He was kind of fighting back, winning, but you know, like you said, no respect. And like the only way to keep Dos Santos off of him was to kind of keep up with him. Like if I don't punch this guy back, he's going to punch me 3 times. Like one of those types of, like he almost had to be like pushed into a high volume fight. But since then, he's been really low volume. Like could Manel Kopp knock out any person in this division?
Yes.
Yeah. Do I trust him to? Fuck no. Like, and it's his problem is look at the Muhammad Makayev fight. He lost just because he didn't do anything. Like he's lost a lot of fights, not a lot of fights, but he's lost fights by just not doing anything. Bruno Silva will do stuff. And Bruno Silva could totally win this fight by getting hurt really bad in one round, but then just having all the volume in the other two. And like Bruno Silva via split decision, like that's a ticket out there that's going to probably pay someone a lot of money. Because I could totally see him just doing more work than Manel Kopp for 12 minutes of this fight, but getting nearly killed in one like 3-minute sequence, you know, in one 40-second sequence. And I'm going to pick Manel Kopp because Bruno Silva did get hurt by David Dvorak, but like David Dvorak beat Manel Kopp. And David Dvorak is like the most low volume dude that got exposed and punted out of the UFC by like Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg's a good fighter, but yeah, Manel Kopp at minus 350, 325, whatever I said, it is absurd. It's a dumb line. And I'll be here next weekend to, you know, lick my wounds and be completely wrong when he hits Bruno Silva with a jump knee in the first 50 seconds. But like his game is such a Japanese MMA game, like with just like the jump knees, like it's just such a, like he wants to fight with shoes on again.
Oh, you know he does.
You can tell. I'm just so unconfident in Manel Kopp, and he thinks he should be fighting for a title. If you see any of his posts on social media, like he's so out of touch on where he's really at. You know, he's like, this fight's going to tell the world a lot. And like, dude, no, it's not. You need to win this fight. Like the dude that beat you got cut. That tells me everything. I'm leaning Kopp though, just on his athleticism and Bruno's, I mean, MMA math doesn't work, but like Cody Durden was putting the screws to him, and we just saw Cody Durden kind of get killed by Joshua Van. And I just, if Cody Durden can have that much striking success, like even if Manel Kopp ups his volume by 30%, something's going to stick. I'm going to go Manel Kopp by knockout in round 2. Main event of UFC Tampa. We have a returning Colby Chaos Covington. He is taking on Joaquin Numansa Buckley. There is a very particular reason why I really wanted to have you on this show. I said I wasn't going to say it publicly, but I'm going to say it. Both of us had a conversation like right when this fight got announced, and we were like, yay. Two guys we find annoying are going to fight each other and I guess the loser will be more annoying, or will the winner be more annoying? Or no, or
undoubtedly the winner.
I think so too. So we both find these guys annoying, but they're also both good fighters. Odds on this fight, we got Buckley coming in as a pretty hefty favorite. He's minus 275. Covington's coming back at a plus 225 dog. This is a really interesting fight. Even though one of the dudes kind of just like pulled up out of nowhere and got this fight, it's been like a year since Colby Covington's fought. Colby Covington being that dude that just pulled up and got this main event out of nowhere. Does kind of make sense, old guard versus new guard. Two dudes that are, I guess they're definitely in the title picture. The winner of this is in the title picture. Colby Covington, last time out, he had that fight, kind of an undeserving title fight with Leon Edwards, where he won the 5th round, broke his foot in the 1st round. Literally the first kick he threw, Leon Edwards hit his elbow, broke his foot, and kind of looked like shit throughout the whole fight. But until he started to decide to try to fight, he won. Before that, he took on Jorge Masvidal. Well, in between the Jorge Masvidal fight and the Leon Edwards fight, he actually had the Jorge Masvidal rematch in that bar. He lost the rematch in the bar against Masvidal, but their contractually obligated fight, he won against Jorge Masvidal. That was back in 2022. Seems like just fucking yesterday. Prior to that, he had the Woodley rematch, where the Woodley rematch was really similar to the Leon Edwards fight in a way where like just like didn't look great through the beginning, but then like once he decided to like change things up, started winning in the later rounds of the fights. Like he won the 5th round against Usman in the rematch and Leon Edwards. Before that, he kind of washed an old Tyron Woodley, and then he had that freaking incredible fight, the first fight with Kamaru Usman. And if you listen into this show, you know everything that happened before then. I'm not going to go through Colby Covington's whole entire record. He beat Robbie Lawler, by the way. Joaquin Buckley, a dude that pulled up to the UFC on short notice, got brained by Kevin Holland, and then his very next fight, he literally gets the best knockout ever against a guy that's gone on to, I know, that fucking jumping, spinning back kick against Impa Kasanganay, against a dude that's went to the PFL and Bellator. Like, Impa Kasanganay is the only dude to go fuck up Johnny Eblen, even though he lost to Johnny Eblen. And yeah, Impa Kasanganay did just get knocked out, but came in 2nd place in their tournament, won another tournament, won $1 million. That's a good win. And he had some problems. He did get knocked out by Alicio Di Chirico with that head kick. That was up at 185. He lost to Nasruddin Imavov, lost to Chris Curtis by knockout. Those are also at 185. But since then, he's decided to come down to 170. He had that really clean head kick knockout of Andre Fialho, beat Alex Morono, flattened Vicente Luque, beat Nursultan Rizaboev in a weird fight where Rizaboev came down from freaking middleweight and literally looked like a slight breeze would knock him over. He just looked so feeble and small. And in his last fight out, he was kind of getting pieced up by Wonder Boy until his weird peekaboo style caught Wonder Boy slipping against the cage and fucking knocked him dead. Wonder Boy's a good win. He's on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fight winning streak, and he's heavily favored to beat Covington. Tell me your thoughts on the fight. Who do you think's going to win? And this is the battle of the most annoying welterweight, not including Ian Garry, I guess. I'm talking crap. I don't think Ian Gary's that annoying. I actually find Buckley and Covington to be far more funny and annoying than Garry.
No, I'm 100% with you on that. A lot of things that you already mentioned have been kind of floating around in my head. Like we talk about Covington's wins, his recent wins, and those came in 2022 and 2020 against two guys who never won another UFC fight after that. So, I don't want to disrespect Masvidal and Woodley because they did accomplish a lot in their careers, but at that point, Colby caught them at the right time, and he was able to just do whatever the hell he wanted to with them.
Can I interject and ask you a question?
Yes.
So he also lost to Usman and he also lost to Leon Edwards without going through the timestamps. Have either one of those guys won since they beat Colby either? I don't think they have, man.
That's true. They haven't.
So even the dudes that have beaten Colby Covington have also since have lost fights.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
that's telling on where the division is.
That's going back to the pandemic. Like since the pandemic hit in March 2020, after he's fought somebody, they have not won a single fight.
I know.
It's ridiculous.
Like, because Usman hasn't won a fight. Usman lost the rematch to Leon Edwards, and he lost to Khamzat Chimaev. And then Leon Edwards just kind of got beat up by Bilal Muhammad.
Yep.
That was the fight after.
And Woodley was cut shortly after, and Masvidal retired after one more fight. Well,
and they both also lost fights, not in MMA, in fucking boxing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those deals with Colby that I don't even know if he's still an elite fighter.
Yeah. You're right to question that.
He I mean, yes, he did break his foot against Leon. But the thing is, he still won the 5th round, and it's like, dude, why didn't you do that earlier? It makes me wonder, okay, is his cardio not what it once was? Because that used to be how Colby beat his opponents. He would just keep coming at them, and he would break them mentally because he would not stop. And he did that against Woodley, he did that against Masvidal, but he didn't do that against Usman in their rematch until late, and I think it's because he respected the power of Usman. And he did not do that at all against Edwards. Is that because he because of the broken foot? I'm going to assume it is. I can't say 100% for sure, but I'll assume that's what it is because I can't imagine that Colby doesn't have his cardio as a weapon. But the other part of it is that it also shows to me that Colby has fear. He fears getting knocked out again the way that he did against Usman. And this isn't me blaming him. If I had my jaw broken the way that his was against Usman, I probably wouldn't be rushing in there either. And we've seen what Buckley can do. Like you said, he scored one of the all-time great KOs, if not the all-time great KO against Kasanganay, and he's got plenty of powers in his hands too. He deaded Wonder Boy in his last fight. He pretty much deaded Luque as well. Buckley can easily end the fight with just a single punch. But I also have it into the back of my head that Colby's not a stupid guy. Colby has always been very smart about the fights that he picks. When he fought Woodley, he got him at the absolute right time. When he fought Masvidal, he got him at the absolute right time. The only fights that he has gotten that haven't been favorable were the title fights. Yeah, exactly. And that's the ultimate end goal, is to be able to become the champion. So those were the fights that he had to take. And he was pretty quick to jump up and say, I'll take that fight with Buckley.
I'm there with you because I am not sold on Joaquin Buckley. Like, Joaquin Buckley, yeah, it was at middleweight, but like, he's hurtable himself.
Yes.
He is probably equally, if not more powerful than Usman. But and Usman is not good at setting up his strikes, but Usman is better at setting them up than Joaquin Buckley, in my opinion. Also, Joaquin Buckley is way more hurtable and defensively not very great. And I mean, in Bellator, what you did, like Logan Storley just like went out there and out grappled him. Like, who has Buckley fought in the UFC that has a game that's a hair similar to Colby? Nobody. He hasn't fought a single dude that's going to go out there and have a pressure wrestling game. Because if Colby Covington does 85% of what he did to Robbie Lawler, who is probably pretty similar to Buckley right about now, I don't know. Like, I asked you who you're going to pick, but I'm just going to step in and tell you, I'm going to take a flyer on Colby Covington. So I'm picking two dogs here because I'm not betting money. And the only thing I'm betting is my ego, and that has been crushed many years ago anyway. So I'm not, all I could do is either come on the show and say, ha, 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 I was right, told you so, or come and eat crow. 80% of the time I'm here eating fucking crow. So I think Colby Covington, number one, I think his biggest problem was leaving ATT, starting little fucking dumpster fires everywhere he went and joining MMA Masters. I don't think that's a good camp for him. But if we get the Colby Covington that fought Kamaru Usman, 80% of that dude that fought him the first time, 80% of the dude that fought Robbie Lawler, Buckley's got good cardio and good output himself, and he's dangerous. But he's also dangerous if you let him back you up against the cage. He doesn't have great footwork. Again, like what he did to Andre Fialho against the cage, Wonder Boy against the cage. Like, Colby's going to know that. Colby's not like a dude that typically takes the back foot. He's got good kicking himself. I think he's going to go out there with like a high volume kicking game and a high volume chain wrestling game. And when Colby Covington is not injured without breaking bones and has his cardio on point and is got his stick-to-itiveness on point, like, I could just see him going out there and just having the same fight he had with Robbie Lawler. Because even at that point, Robbie Lawler is just as dangerous as Joaquin Buckley is today. At that point, it's fucking Robbie Lawler. You know, he fought Robbie Lawler after that Ben Askren fight. Remember what Robbie Lawler did to Ben Askren? Yeah, and that was Robbie when he was really old towards the end of his career. Another guy that he did that to, kind of similar to Demian Maia himself. But this fight will either sell me on Joaquin Buckley, or I can just come back here and be like, told you so. And it's really probably stupid for me to pick Colby Covington in this fight just based off of, like, you know, go to Sherdog.com, look at his record. The wins don't look great. The losses don't look great either. But, like, I mean, Joaquin Buckley has beaten Antonio Arroyo, barely beat Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, almost lost. Beat Albert Duraev, not in the UFC anymore. Lost to Imavov, lost to Curtis. Andre Fialho, not in the UFC anymore, and went on to get knocked out like 7 more times since then. Alex Morono, love him. We love Alex Morono here on this show. Colby Covington would wash Morono of 2023. Luque, when he fought Luque took like one shot and was like, I don't want another brain bleed, and just gave up.
Yep.
Nursultan Ruzaboev is not very good and has one of the weirdest records. Like, Jay Petrie probably had a wonderful time validating Nursultan Ruzaboev's pro MMA record.
I don't envy Jay's job.
Like, how did you do that? And Wonder Boy actually looked really good against Buckley and was like cruising to a dub until he got caught against the cage, and he's like 40 something and he took the back foot. This is going to be in a bigger cage, so I don't think Buckley is going to have the same pressuring footwork, and I don't think Covington is just going to take the back foot. Like, Covington just has to do what he usually used to always do to win this fight. Said it was going to be quick, but I was long. I'm going with Colby Covington here. As a flyer, call me crazy, but I think he's going to win. And I think it's going to be really, really funny, because if Colby Covington beats Joaquin Buckley, Shavkat Rakhmonov is not fighting for a title. It's going to be Colby Covington versus Bilal Muhammad, and it's going to be really funny.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that.
It's going to be really funny. And that's why the UFC did this. The UFC is like, look, this Shavkat shit doesn't play out. Maybe the Colby thing will, because he's always funny. So not only am I taking Colby Covington to win, I'm taking Colby Covington to say a bunch of crazy shit towards Bilal Muhammad. They already have a past, and I would totally be not surprised if we see Covington versus Bilal Muhammad after Ramadan in 2025.
So, yeah.
Give me your pick.
I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah, no, I gave all the reasons why I'm not positive that Colby can do it, and I also don't trust Buckley's ability to stop takedowns, because you nailed it on the head when you said that he hasn't faced anybody who would regularly take him down. I think or at least most takedowns. I think Duraev is actually probably the most takedown centric fighter that he has faced, and Duraev got him down, but that was also at 185. Colby's he's on the small end of 170, so I don't think that size is going to be the deciding factor in whether or not he gets him down. It's going to be his ability to just constantly take him down. But you know what, for shit's sake, and because I really don't want to see Colby get another title fight when he is only fighting once a year, I'll go with Buckley, with a changing of the guard. But again, this is one of those fights where I said with Cobb and Silva, I'd throw money on Silva and pick Cobb. In this case, I'd throw money on Colby, because again, those odds are stupid. This should be much closer to a pick 'em, but I'm picking Buckley.
I'm not smart. A smart person should pick Buckley. Like, he's on a good run. Covington has done literally fuck all. He fought a terrible snoozer, but won the 5th round against Leon Edwards. I do not align myself with Colby Covington's beliefs. However, I do believe Colby Covington puts on an act.
Oh, he does.
And deep down inside, I will always find anyone that's willing to stick to an act. Somewhat respectable, but more funny than anything. Joaquin Buckley's got that same Jamal Hill energy. Where I don't think it's an act.
I'm not going to disagree with you there. I will not disagree with you.
One dude is putting on a show to be annoying, and the other dude's kind of, I don't know.
That is who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's his thing. We'll see. Battle of the battle of the dudes we don't mind seeing lose. Let's call it that. Because the loser of this fight, especially if it's Covington, if Covington loses this fight, he's fucking done. He won't retire in the cage, but he'll just go walk away for 10 years and then ask for his release. And I don't know. I don't think Colby will fight again if he loses this fight, or he'll try to pick a Nate Diaz fight, or he'll try to fight Dustin Poirier if he loses this. I think that's all that's left for him. Buckley can still rebuild off a loss here. You can say, well, he's a dude that fought for the title. He's an interim champion, even though he was only an interim champion because the UFC got mad at Woodley. It'll be fun though. I enjoy when it's two dudes I don't favor. I almost favor watching those fights.
I get that.
Maybe it's bloodlust. I'm not too sure. But that's the show, guys. Dude, thank you so much for tuning in. Anything you want to plug, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
No, not that I can think of.
Anything
I'm
cool
on
coming
Twitter
up
at
that you
Dayne
want?
Fox, and Sherdog is the home. Catch me every Thursday with my dumbass opinion articles. Well, I'm a
Smarter
dumbass,
than
but
mine.
usually I have good opinions.
I like your opinions. I would argue they're smarter than mine. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it.